difference between content, which is one-sided, and conversation, which is a group of people talking about an idea or question, or sharing knowledge. If you have customers, you have community.
I think that's really true, especially as modern businesses realize that the voice of the customer is one to be reckoned with. What matters most to your business is probably happening outside of your business, and a community, online or otherwise, expresses a quality of discourse you wouldn't otherwise hear.
Kind of like a 24/7 focus group.
Totally.
So what the heck is community management? I think of community management as part customer support, part brand evangelism, part idea and feedback gathering with a dash of marketing, shaken, not stirred. Community management reaches all aspects and parts of a business, representing the voice of the community internally, but also serving as an ambassador to the community from the company.
Community management means there's a facilitator to help guide the conversation along, an advocate for all sides, company, community, and back again. Think of it being as the host of a really great cocktail party.
So, how does community bring value to your business? Well, first of all, a customer community can provide peer-to-peer support as well as one-to-many support, which can result in a significant cost savings in your support budget. And community can serve as a kind of canary in a coal mine. It's a way to see early warning signs of trouble, but also to capture early ideas and help steer the way for how your business can best use that feedback to delight your customers.
It can also help to develop and nurture brand advocates, evangelists, champions to your cause, all those key influencers. It's a real conversation, so there's really good ways to bubble up the content that matters.
So, what qualities are important in a community manager? Well, for one, to be a really good communicator. And a lot of it is actually about being a people person, being able to be interested and fascinated by all types of personalities, because you will see a lot of personalities in a community. And if you're somebody who wants everyone to like you, then you're out of luck. You know the saying, you can please some of the people some of the time.
So have a sense of humor and empathy with yourself, with your team, and with your community. When I was a community manager with Six Apart, I always called myself Six Apart's most annoying customer.
And you must have patience and a strong sense of self. So how do you manage a community successfully? A simple way of organizing your approach to building out and managing a community is to think about the most concrete example of a community in our lives, our own town, cities, neighborhoods. No matter what size your town is, in order to function, it has to use the same building blocks as any other town. So we're going to talk about what those common building blocks are for your online community. Rules, enforcement, social engineering, economy, culture, infrastructure, and distribution. In order to know what you and your community agree is okay, establishing some rules for engagement is a core building block. Being clear about this sets the tone for your community, but also gives you recourse if people abuse the privilege. You want to establish a social contract explicitly. This might be in the form of community guidelines. We've got some community guidelines on Get Satisfaction that inform how we expect our users across the network to conduct themselves. We remind users of these guidelines as the need arises and have relied on them when we've had to make a decision about whether or not to ban a user. Flickr's community guidelines were quite unique when they were created and were written in a way that not only makes it clear what kind of behavior is okay and what isn't, but is written in a voice that reflects Flickr's personality and thus the overall tone of the community. Our customer company pact is another example of a social contract. As community managers, we actually serve two constituents, the company we work for and our customers. And this is really core to the way that we here at Get Satisfaction look at the world, which is why we created the Company Customer Pact. It's a framework for creating mutual responsibilities and benefits for both of these groups, companies and customers. Ginevra came to us from Six Apart, where she was a community manager and customer of Get Satisfaction, and she let the CC Pact guide her as she interacted with her community, not just on Get Satisfaction, but in other spaces as well. So Ginevra, why don't you tell us a bit about how you used the CC Pact and what it meant to your community at Six Apart?
The CC Pact was a really good framework to use in order to help instruct both our employees and our customers as to what an acceptable level and encouraged level of interaction style was.
That's how we hope that everyone can really use it. It's definitely a document for you to rely on, and it really can be applied to any kind of customer interaction, not just in Get Satisfaction. You also really want to set clear expectations with your community. Let them know what to expect from you, what level of participation you plan plan to have in the community. There are different ways to do this. In Get Satisfaction, we give you the option of setting your participation status, as well as a space where you can add a custom message to your community. And there are a lot of ways this space can be used, but one is to do as this company has done and let your customers know when you'll be available and monitoring the community. And then establish the rules implicitly by modeling the behavior you want. Lead by example. Rules are meaningless, though, unless they're respected and enforced. This doesn't mean you have to have a heavy hand. Ultimately, a neighborhood watch style of enforcement is a great measure of success. Everybody has a vested interest in maintaining the tone and social mores of the community. People are there because they like the rules, but there are times when you do need to enforce the rules you've put into place in order to keep the peace. Let community members know when they've broken the rules. Here's an example of an email that one of our community managers had to send to a user of our system of Get Satisfaction who was definitely breaking the rules. And so we were very clear about what that meant. And it's very important to not feed the trolls. Ginevra probably can speak a little bit about this, as with all of her experience managing the community for LiveJournal and TypePad. So do you want to talk a little bit about not feeding the trolls, Ginevra?
Sure. A troll essentially is someone who is spoiling the community for the sake of spoiling it. So don't encourage that typical behavior by falling prey to their manipulation. Essentially, the best way to handle a troll is to be firm, let them know that you see them, and then ignore them and leave them under the bridge like this guy.
Exactly. And here's another example of an interaction that one of our community managers had with somebody who definitely had troll-like behaviors. You can see Eric made it very clear what behavior was unacceptable, that the person was welcome to continue to post if they could do so productively, and you can see from this customer that he really had no interest in any kind of productive conversation. So, if it becomes apparent that a member is not interested in a productive conversation, just politely leave the conversation. Just don't get sucked into endless debate. So while it's nice to think that things in your community will just work out on their own, the most successful communities eventually target the kinds of people or overall mix that the founders believe to be optimal for its health. If you're running a customer community, you probably already target certain segments or types of customers, but even within that, you're likely to want to proactively go after certain kinds of personalities. For example, your power users, passionate fans, nurturers. There are a lot of specific things that can be done to help cultivate the mix you want. You should encourage and reward the kind of behavior you want to cultivate in your community. One way of doing this within Get Satisfaction is to anoint them as champions in your community. A lot of you are probably familiar with this feature that you can give to really helpful participants in your community who display the kind of interaction that you desire and really help other users. Also, use subject matter experts when you can. Ask subject matter experts from your own company or even outside your company to jump in and respond as appropriate. One of the earliest examples of this in Get Satisfaction was in the Whole Foods community. A customer asked a question about the source of the private label water, and a rep from the private label division actually just came in and gave a really great answer. And then find your passionate users out where they're talking about you and draw them to the community where everyone can benefit from their knowledge and passion. And again, set the example. Don't be an automatron. Don't be generic. Let your personality come through. Be real. Even using your first real name and a photo of yourself can make a big difference in people viewing you, and by extension, your company and organization as human. This is a little shot of Ginevra, and as you can see, the tone that she uses in the community, her voice, it's Ginevra. It's how she would interact with you if you were her friend that she was chatting with in the hallway. She's just very real, very human, and that really helps to kind of engineer a community that has a very open feel to it and allows your customers to really feel connected to you and deepens that relationship.
It's true, and I'm that Southern, so I'm really trying to tamp it down for the sake of everybody understanding me. Writing the way that you would have a conversation, the way that you would instant message somebody is really key to illuminating you as a human being, and it encourages that one-to-one interaction that really draws out conversation that's valuable with your customers.
And I think it draws out a lot more understanding and empathy, too, when they start to really see you as a human and not just the big bad company that they want to complain to.
Mm-hmm.
Any thriving town creates opportunities for people to be successful pursuing their interests. And people have different motivations in communities. For some people, it's power. For others, it's acknowledgement of popularity. For others, it's just simply to help others. And you can harness these to create a kind of economy, a system of incentives and rewards that can motivate people to be their best and create a vibrant community. Assemble your Justice League. Foster champions. Remember what I just said a bit ago about champions? The more of these you have in your community, the more peer-to-peer help you're going to see arise. Gaining a champion badge and possibly even some moderation controls is a kind of currency that is highly desirable to certain types of people. And encourage and empower the community members who contribute the most. There's a lot to be said for social capital. Here, a user asked a question about our product versus another product, and before we even had a chance to answer him, one of our champions gave a really great answer that was just a very true, honest opinion from him, which actually speaks a lot louder than any answer that we could have given straight off. And then Ginevra, of course, came in and told him, great answer, and really rewarded and encouraged him for stepping up. So just make sure you reward community members to create more of the kind of behavior and participation that you desire. Every community has a distinct personality and reason for existing, and this does call for different kinds of nurturing, different styles of moderation. But for customer communities, there are some things that are universally important for all to create a productive and effective and open culture. One that's very important is to not be afraid to say you're sorry and don't be defensive. The culture of a community can be gravely affected by employees who get defensive and accusatory with their customers. And you can breed a lot of goodwill just by saying I'm sorry, by being truly empathetic and really hearing your customers. This is an example I come back to time and again that I just loved. There was a customer who was incredibly frustrated and angry with the failure of a product that he had purchased, and he'd lost a bunch of work that he had done with this product. And he just came in here, and his post was incredibly long and angry. And as you can see here, the CEO of the company came in and said, "Firstly, I am deeply sorry our product caused you so much pain. My name is Terrence Swee, and I am co-founder and CEO of Movie." And he went on to say more about it, and they went on to solve the issue. And it resulted in the customer coming back and saying, "My apologies to the staff of Movie and customers reading this," and just explaining that, he was venting. And obviously, this really turned around into a success story and was then there for other customers and potential customers of this company to see, like, hey, this company really stands by their product, they stand by their customers, and they take responsibility when it doesn't work. That does more than kind of any formal marketing that you could pay for to really win people over into trusting you and trusting your brand. You also really want to work towards productive outcomes and whenever you can, take the opportunity to deepen your relationship with your customer. When there's problems, acknowledge it, work together to solve them, get in there and let people know when they've been solved. Just really communicate with them and be open to the dialogue. And establish an internal policy for response, time to respond, how you'll respond to certain hot button issues, and make sure that anyone participating in your community from your company is on the same page. You should each have your own voice. You don't want to have sort of this corporate, like, we are Borg voice from the company, but there should be some consistency in the time to respond and the overall messaging and tone. And you also have to evolve and grow with your community. As your community scales, the culture may change, and that's okay as long as it remains a productive, effective space. Don't worry about things changing, but do stay tuned into these changes so that you can grow with them and can continue to steer things in the right direction. So there's a lot that goes on beneath the surface that people don't really think about. Investing properly in the basics is important, sort of the plumbing of a city, if you will. You want to have a good community platform, but you also want to have good listening tools, good analytics, and you want to be sure people have the option of being alerted when there's new activity to keep the dialogue open. And you want to prune your community, keep it relevant and curated. Cultivate good content to breed more good content. This really builds trust that the community is going to work for your customers. With our moderation tools, you can do things like merging and archiving to keep the most relevant and helpful conversations organized and front and center. You can also edit tiles for relevance and findability, and you can tag topics, make product associations for easier sorting and filtering for you and your customers. This is sort of all the stuff that you wouldn't really think about, but when it's done well and done right, it really makes for a much more valuable, useful, effective community space. And then finally, you want to weave your community throughout your customer experience, which, if you're using Get Satisfaction, can be done with the use of our widgets. But you also want to take your affiliation with your community into the other spaces you go online to interact with your customers, like Facebook and Twitter, and anywhere else customers might be talking about you and are ready to engage. Social media monitoring tools such as Radian6 or Google Analytics are really helpful for this. So when a community manager's done their job well, set up their community with a good foundation, it, like a smoothly running city, will have a lot of moving parts, but hopefully they'll all work in harmony with each other for the benefit of all the residents. In fact, the residents may even end up fulfilling many of the functions of community management themselves over time. A community manager's work is never done, but it just changes as the community matures.